sign on to make a game, and you're always going to be behind that iron curtain.
I'm sure that they speak of such things in the cold, dark corners of the world, But obviously, if you walk into a CEO or CFO at EA and tell them, I'm getting the guys together, we're thinking about starting a game creators guild, and he tells you, okay, I'm pulling security now. He's going to escort you from the building. You will not be allowed to return to your desk, and we're keeping your code. That's the industry. This is a paranoid, crazy industry, and intellectual properties are of such importance that if you have a great idea, and you develop that idea while you were working for EA will take your children. If you try to publish that somewhere else, and it's. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of industries we can look at. I'm a big wrestling fan. I used to call wrestling, do announce a wrestling show in Las Vegas, and I did radio shows and stuff. And wrestlers, pro wrestlers, have talked about forming a guild or a union, etc., for so many years, and it's never happened because the big guys, the guys at the very top, they're making their millions. They're totally protected. It's not in their interest to risk anything to benefit the lower-level guys. And I think you find the same thing is true in this industry. The people who made it to the top feel, hey, I worked damn hard. I put my sweat equity in, and I'm a star now. And I don't want there to be more stars, because the more stars there are, the less glimmer I have. And until people with big names start standing up. I mean, we thought we were going to see this with like God, when the Gathering of Developers group started up. And of course it ended up in internecine fighting and squabbling and they break up. So it's like anything else. Can this industry get itself together? It would have to be through something like the Game Developers Conference. Where somebody says, I'm renting this room at a certain time, and I want to talk about starting a guild so that we have a little protection in this industry, so that we have at least as much protection as people who make movies and television shows and write books and record CDs. And maybe then, if you can get some of the big people, big names to show up, and the smaller people see the big people going in, you could see some pushback. But of course, I also come from the comic book industry, where the threat was always, we can get a 14-year-old kid off the street to do this for free. And Charlton once proved it, actually, by bringing 14-year-old kids in off the street to do it. And the work looked like 14-year-old kids had been brought off the street to do it, but nonetheless, they know that there are so many people out there who would so like to do this that almost anyone is replaceable. And nobody has that big a name yet. There is not a big enough star yet in this business that they could be like, say, Hulk Hogan. If in the 80s Hulk Hogan had stood up and said, unless we get a union, I'm not wrestling anymore, then there would be wrestlers unions today. But there is no one of significant stature in the game industry at the creative level who could stand up and say, hey, I'm walking out. They'd say goodbye to them. And they have to many designers in the past who have tried that. So it's tough, it's tough. Yeah. I think it may be many years before we see that. Anybody else?
What advice would you give someone who wants to get into the video game journalism industry?
Wow. First, I would ask why, and I'm not to be sarcastic, but as you're living, as your profession, or you just want to, maybe on the side make a little bit of extra money, because it's two different things. Making a living full time as a game journalist, it's hard. I mean, I think if there are 40 to 50 full-time game journalists who make their money exclusively through game journalism, I would be surprised. There aren't the magazines are drying up, the sites pay nothing. The people with names, they'll get paid a little bit, but not enough that you can really make a living off it. So unless you store a job in an editorial position at either one of the big sites or one of the remaining magazines, and even then, how much job security do you have? It's very hard. If on the other hand, you're just looking to, every once in a while write something about games, then I'd say there's a good chance because there are so many outlets, but money, financially, it's not the career path that I would recommend for anyone if their interest is they need to make money.
What are your thoughts on the shift towards non-tangible games?
Excuse me?
Non-tangible games, downloadable games?
I think it's great. I mean, these are games that, unless people had made systems, had emulators, nobody was even playing them. Nobody was even seeing them. These are some great games, great old games, and I think it's wonderful that they're being made available via download. I love the virtual console idea. I love the Wii. I mean, to me, the Wii is the single most innovative piece of game hardware that's been created since the Atari 2600. Anything else?
Do you think that there's something about games themselves, just the interactive nature of them, that makes translating something that started as a video game into other mediums or vice versa more difficult?
Yeah. It's it's movies I'm sure you're talking specifically about when you've seen so many video games into movies and movies into video games. And it doesn't seem to work either way, does it? I mean, generally speaking, you take a game like King Kong, based on Peter Jackson's King Kong. Here's a game where basically you're being dragged to a location, a bunch of monsters come up, you shoot them, you drag to the next location, a bunch of monsters come up and you shoot them. As you're being dragged through the storyline of the movie, and basically you get to shoot them. And they're two intrinsically different forms. I mean, one isn't meant to be interactive. That's what it's all about. My choice determines which way I go. And movies aren't very good at that. I mean, Clue was not a big success because it offered alternate endings in different theaters. Because people want a story, they want to know that this is the end. This is not an end. That we have parallel universes in which 17 other things could have happened. Well, I know that already, but I would like closure on the story. So, yeah, there's a problem. And we've seen very few successful video game to movie translations and vice versa as a result of that. Anybody else?
Did the crash of the industry in the 80s cause electronic games magazines to crash? Or were there other factors or other reasons that the magazine didn't continue? I guess it didn't continue into the 90s.
Well, it was revived in 91, yeah. But of course, in between that, we did video games and computer entertainment in the thing. But it literally folded for lack of ads. There's so many companies were closing that there simply weren't enough companies to give us more than, say, 12 pages of ads. And if you look at the early issues of electronic games, it's like one ad to one page of copy. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. When I was editing Tips and Tricks, we were doing a 100-page magazine with like 12 pages of ads. So it's gone way down. And you can't publish a magazine making money off the newsstand sales and subscription sales. You've got to make your money off the advertising. And there just weren't enough companies to continue advertising. And so when it got healthy again, in the late 80s and 90s with Nintendo, that's why we were able to start it up again. Doesn't mean we had advertising. Anybody else? One more question?
What are you doing these days?
What are you doing these days? Well, I'm wearing a shirt. It says Get Games, GetYourGames.com. I'm writing there on a regular basis. I'm actually a minority owner on the site. It's both a game store, a little bit like a virtual version of this place, and a site and a forum site where we've got some really good writers. I think some of the best writers in gaming. that do regular blogs for us. And I'm also working for Running with Scissors, the postal folks, and we've had an interesting year. I got to meet Uwe Boll.
Did you box him?
It could definitely be its own Q&A.